Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start this meeting officially. And if anyone rolls in, we can either catch them up or uh, or they can watch the recording. I'm going to go ahead and put the agenda in the chat. Let's do that. Okay. So this is the agenda. I just don't remember the links. So there are some links in there. Right. So normally we start our meetings off with some introductions, and I see there's a lot of people here that I don't know. So, which is great. This is a perfect modeling interest group meeting to come in as someone who has never been to one of these meetings before, because in some ways this meeting kind of covers one of the cornerstones of modeling, which is the Arches designer, which is how you model within Arches. So, okay. All right, so I dropped the agenda in the chat, and we do start with introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and what I'm going to ask is for everyone who introduces themselves to also add, note what their experience level is with Arches Designer. Okay, so hello everyone, my name is Annabelle, and I am the chair of the Arches Modeling Interest Group. And I am a project specialist at the Getty Conservation Institute and have worked on the Arches project since 2013. And I have a lot of experience with Arches Designer. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead. George, did you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's George Brusaker, and I am the CEO of a small company called Tacken Solutions that helps in semantic data management. I'm also a co-chair of the CDOC CRM SIG and a chair of the Arches Resource Modeling Working Group, although we do not meet. And I have very good experience with the Arches Designer, and I'm excited by the graphic of today's presentation.
Oh, I think the graph. Now I know what you're talking about. Okay, I'm going to say, Yana, did you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. So I am Jana. I work for Flaxen Teal and I am their information scientist and experience with Arches Designer. Don't tell Phil, but low-ish, I guess.
Lowish?
I've never used it in terms of like actually creating something, if you want. I use it for mapping, I use it for like orienting myself among the nodes and everything, but I haven't actually created anything from scratch within it. So that kind of low experience, if you want.
Okay, thanks,
You want me to
Yana.
pass it on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, then Mike.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Mike Hayworth. I work for the Arcadia Fund. I project manage a number of heritage site documentation projects that are working in the Global South, all of which use the Arches database. So lots of experience of watching other people design and play with Arches databases, but extremely limited experience myself of using Arches Designer.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. See, I'm going to see. That's Ron.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Ron van den Brande. I'm working in Antwerp, Belgium, in the Letterenhuis, which is a literary and cultural archive. And we're using Arches for describing our collection pieces in detail. So next to an archival context, which we're describing in the archive space. So we're using archive space and Arches side to side. And I'm an application manager and functional analyst in our institution. So I've my experience with ArchES Designer has been in developing or assisting and overviewing the development of resource models for our distinct object types we're creating in ArchES. And also, so we've migrated from a previous system to ArchES. So my experience is, I think, quite extensive with ArchES Designer, but we're still using ArchES 6.1, I think. So I'm definitely curious to see any advances or differences with the current ArchES installation, and also what's in the demo version.
Thank you. Emily?
Hello, I'm Emily. I'm a professional fellow on the ArchES project at the Getty Conservation Institute. And I've had experience using ArchES Designer working on some graph changes with Annabelle for Rascals, which is a application under development right now for reference and sample collections. So I've had quite a bit of fun, adding branches, removing branches, making label changes, but I'm always excited to learn more. Thanks.
Okay. Teddy?
Morning, everyone. My name is Teddy Sherban. I'm from City and County of San Francisco Planning Department, and I'm kind of helping the team get their hands back around our ArchES instance. My experience is very low, so I'm learning a lot right now. I'm getting kind of into some of calls like these to try and figure out how best to rebuild our expertise.
Great. All right, Tad?
Yes. Hi, I'm Tad Dockery. I'm a software developer at the Wisconsin State Historic Preservation Office. My current level of experience with ArchES Designer is setting up our test server and going, wow, this is a lot better than having to physically define the model in the database for people. So I'm excited to go beyond that.
Great. All right, Alexandra?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Alex. Alongside my colleagues Andra and Stefan, we are representatives of the Romanian Ministry of Culture. And frankly speaking, we are all beginners when it comes to ArchES. But at the moment, we are developing the main ontology, which will be used in our project, national project called eHeritage in English. And yes, we are still learning the entire platform. There is a lot to learn, and hope that we will manage to see insights in this presentation.
Great, thank you. And I'll just take that as introduction to all three of you, to Stefan and Andra. Okay, great. And then Drashti?
Hello, I'm Drashti. I'm based in University of York, and I'm working on the MyZam project currently, developing the Build Heritage database. I am very new to Build Heritage. I'm very new to designing the ArchES. I've used ArchES, but yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more from this group.
Great. I think this is a good group for this, like I said earlier, for this presentation, because I really am going to cover some things that might be a little bit basic for some people who have already used this, but I also want to say that anytime during the presentation, if you have a question, you can please, about anything that I'm showing currently, you can put that in the chat and I will try to address it. so that you don't have to necessarily remember or your question or you don't have to try to navigate back to where I was when I was demonstrating what at Arches Designer. Actually, and I am actually going to say that I do have some announcements. I want to mention that for those of you in the US, there is a Arches, another interest group meeting for the US interest group that takes place on, I should have had the date keyed up before I started talking, but it is the next Arches US interest group is, I believe it's next week on July 9th. So if you are based in the US and you can go attend that meeting, and that meeting is about ETL or how you actually get data into Arches once you define your models and you have an Arches implementation running, it'll be a discussion and there will be some presentations on how you actually get your data into Arches. So that's the Arches US, the US Arches interest group next week. And I do want to say that the Arches community just had a meeting, developers meeting in Sheffield, last month, and there some relevant discussion topics occurred surrounding modeling, in particular, what in regards to graph migrations. Now, that's for most of you here, that's a bit advanced, but basically there was some discussion about how models can be migrated, but not just models being migrated, but how you can use different versions of models and there still being some connection to original models. So that was discussed during the developers meeting, and there will be a recording of that meeting that will be published at some point. Okay. All right. So and I'd say if you signed up for if you got a meeting request, then you're in the mailing list, on the mailing list for this group. But there is a mailing list for this group if you do want to get a meeting request via email, and that you can find that via our web page on archesproject.org. I'm going to ask Emily, could you drop that in the chat, the link to the interest group page, so that people, if they aren't signed up for the email, they can go ahead and sign up for that.
Yes, I'll drop it in just a few moments.
Okay, great. So before I start on this deep dive into the demo, I'm going to ask, you'll see here in the agenda, we usually have a modeling clinic, but I didn't see anyone drop a question in the modeling clinic in the forum or in the thread for this meeting, but I'll just ask right now, so just so I understand what kind of time how much time I have, because I will say this, I can talk about Arches Designer in this demo for a long time, and I want to make sure that I have as much time as possible to cover enough here. So does anyone have a modeling question that has nothing to do with Arches Designer? Okay. If you do, you always have the option to ask that on the Arches community forum. And yeah, so, and you can, and if you have a modeling question, so for example, especially for everyone, there's a lot of new people here, for all of the new people, if you have a follow-up question that results from this meeting, or if you're playing around with the Arches modeling demo and you have if any questions pop up, please do post them on the forum and make sure to use the tag Arches modeling. And don't worry, we're not going to wait until the next meeting, because this is a quarterly meeting, but we're not going to wait until the next meeting to answer it. Probably answer that immediately. Not probably, I will answer that immediately. So, okay, great. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch into the demo today, and I'll share my screen. Okay. Are you all seeing the archesproject.org website? Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm starting here because I can give you links and everything, but I think I find that knowing how to get to information from the Arches Project website is always a good kind of a starting point. And also, I just want to let you know about other demos as well. But under the About menu, you can navigate to Arches Interactive Demos. And you'll see here that we have 3 demos currently available. So one for Arches for HERs, one for Arches for Science, and then we have the modeling demo. And I'll go ahead and click on that. Now, the Arches modeling demo is a bit different than the other 2 demos. The other 2 demos include, are basically fully featured Arches implementations, whereas the Arches modeling demo is actually not. It's very bare bones because the whole point of this demo is for people, you, to become more familiar with the back end of Arches, in particular Arches Designer, and to design the models. In the other demos, if we gave you that ability, it would understandably, it would essentially break the demo, because what you would be doing would be playing with the underlying data structure. So we have never done this in the past, but now we're doing it because we want people to be able to play around with this without having to spin up their own Arches, instance just to work on the modeling. So that gives you an opportunity to work on models to help you evaluate whether or not Arches is right for you, but if you've decided to use Arches to do some preliminary modeling. I will say that you should not use the site for your main modeling, because this site is refreshed once a week on Sundays. So it's Sundays at 5 a.m. GMT or BST, depending on what time of year it is. And any new data that you have entered into the system, if you created a new model, that it will be deleted. Now, I'll show you how you can save your work before that happens, if you do want to save your work. And but just know that actually happens once a week. So before I launch into show you the actual demo, I'll just go over the information that's here, and it describes what information is in here. So I'll say this, that currently we've loaded the OG package into the Arches modeling demo. So that includes these models, and we'll go over that when we're in the demo. I will say that currently, the OG resource models in this demo use the old controlled vocabulary manager, which is the reference data manager. But I'm going to go through an example of changing that through this. And I think probably the thing that is new for everyone is there's an experimental plugin that we've included in the demo, which is the graph relation viewer. This is not an extension that is available yet, but if you work with this, if you start playing around with this and you think that this would be of value to add to the Arches suite of extensions and applications, you can let us know that. You can let us know either via the forum, you can email me and let me know that, yes, I want this to not be experimental, and I want this plugin to be part of my normal Arches workflow, my Arches modeling workflow. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and launch into it. So click that. And yeah, so normally something will pop up, and actually I'll do this here so that you can see. So normally there will be a pop-up. So I'm going to do this. Oh, there is no pop-up. Okay, but oh, I see, because we're already logged in. So yeah, so basically, when you go to the Arches modeling demo site, you are already logged in as a demo user, and that is the case for the other demos as well. That you are already logged in and you have the permissions that we want you to have for this particular demo. And you'll see here about this demo, and that just goes back to this webpage that we were just on archesproject.org. Search, you're not really going to be using search unless, and I'll just say this, once you add a model here and define the cards for that model, you could enter data here. You could enter business data if you wanted to test your model. But I'm going to go ahead and launch into Arches Designer. And as I mentioned earlier, we have preloaded this demo with models from the OG package, which is, and as a reminder for those, and we did have a presentation on this, but the OG package is basically essentially a starter package of models that are based on the linked art serialization of the CDOC-CRM. And if you have any specific questions on that package, I'll just say this, that George Brusacker is one of the co-authors of OG, and he's on this call. So, yeah. So if you're interested, definitely you can ask that question. But we already have some models here. But if you wanted to, say, create a new model, you could do that. So to do that, you would add. So you see that you have three options in regards to add. You can create a new resource model from scratch, create a new branch from scratch, or import a branch or resource model in. It's the caveat to the importing is currently this is a version 8 instance of Arches. So if you import an incompatible resource model, it might not render correctly. Or alternatively, if you maybe you are using a model that is a version 8 model, but utilizes data types that aren't in the core version of Arches, that also might not render correctly. So that's just the caveat there. But I am going to go ahead and start with creating a new resource model. And this is something that we've talked about before, but I'll go ahead and do this. And so I'm just going to say I want to create a model for person. So I'll just name that person, and I'm just going to, and I'll say this, when you're using the demo, when you name things, if you could, because other people will be using this demo, if you can put your initials or something to signify that this is your model. And this is definitely going to come to play if you're cloning other people's models, you're cloning the OG models. If you could just signify that this is something, this is your model that you're working on. So I'm just going to say person, ALE, those are my initials. And I could have a subtitle, but I don't usually. And within Arches Designer, you have the opportunity to choose what ontology you want to use. And so what that means is that you have the opportunity, oh, look at that. This is the Takin Solutions or the link.art ontology. And you can also, in any Arches implementation, you can also load your own ontology. You can load, you can load an XML from another ontology that already exists. And I mean, really, the value of any ontology is that it's widely used and well documented. So any ontology that you use, I'd say, as long as it's that and it's appropriate for your use case, then that's something that makes sense to do. So I'm choosing to use it. Yeah, George.
Just to bracket that it says Takin Solutions there, but there's no Takin Solutions ontology. It's just the name of the setup file so if you actually dig into this instance, downloading it, it's CDoc-CRM, it's linked Dart. It's just, so don't be deceived in thinking like, oh, there's some obscure, branded ontology. There's that represents a collection of CDoc-CRM ontologies, and as you say, Annabelle, like regardless of what this is named, if you wanted to load a biology ontology or EDM ontology, as long as it's represented in RDF, go ahead. You can do that, and you use your Arches Designer. So just to
Exactly.
make clear that Taken Solutions is deceptive there in terms of there is no Taken Solutions ontology.
Yeah, that just really refers to the
Setup file.
the setup file, absolutely. Okay, and then all right, and then the first thing that you have to do, and this is really important here, is if you're using an ontology, you're really at this point you're going to define what the entity class is for this. What is the person? And I'll say this root class here. Once you start with this, once you define the root class, you cannot change this. You would basically have, essentially, for the most part, within Arches, at least within Arches Designer, you would have to start over again. So I would say be sure to define this. And so I'm going to use this one, E39 actor. There's another class you could potentially use, but I'll use actor for this. And then under configuration, I'll let you know that this is not something that is currently being used. I mean, at least we're not recommending this. You use this, where it says resource models that may be related. If you use an earlier version of Arches, this is actually more relevant to you. But for version 8 and actually version 7 and above, this is not something that we would recommend, because this is essentially creating ability for resource models to be related, not within the graph structure. All right, and then author name. Just fill that in. And if there's a JSON LD context, you could put that there. For AP I'll just go listen ALE. For the slug, for the API access, I'm not going to go into what that means, but you could define that. And then, all right, and then I'm going to save these edits. All right, so I've got this now, and so now I have the beginnings of my model. And let's say that I want to I can add information, like for example, I want to add a node, but information on what kind of person is this? That's not really what kind of person, but maybe we want to add some information. I'll just say some sort of typology, and we can do that by clicking on that. So essentially what I did was when I used the plus sign to add a node downstream, a child node of this person. And let's say I just person type. I'm going to say this right now, person type, that's not necessarily a thing. I mean, I guess it is a thing, but you would probably want to define what you mean by person type more. But this is just for how to use Arches Designer. And I know that this is going to be E55 type. And I'll just say this is not, this demonstration is not about how to use the CDoc-CRM. This is just showing you how to actually execute it. And then E2 has type. And then you'll see here that the semantic, basically it forms a semantic question, or a semantic sentence, not question. But it also is essentially the representation. If you know what this is, it's a triple. So you have the person. This person has the type, person type, which is an E55 type. And so this is built when you're selecting from these dropdowns, it automatically creates this semantic sentence for you so that you know to help you build this build this branch. Now, I will say this, that you notice that in the dropdown, I only have a few options here. And if you are familiar with this ontology, you know that there are many properties that exist, but within one of the great things that Arches Designer does for you is that once you load the RDF of an ontology, it enforces the ranges in the domain. So basically, I selected E55 type initially, and then that automatically constrains what relationships that an E55 type could have to an E39 person. So that helps to constrain your modeling so that you're not having to look up everything. It gives you a reasonable choice of what you can choose for either whether you start with the property or the relationship or the ontology or class or entity. All right, so I'm going to save that. Okay, and I'll go ahead and publish this draft. Now, I think one of the things within Arches version 8 that is new, and there is a video, we had a meeting about this on graph versioning. And you can find that information you can see that video in the video playlist for the modeling interest group. And but this is new for version 8, where you can create different versions of models. And so for this, I'm going to define this is initial creation of this model. And I'll publish that. Okay, so now this graph is published. What does that mean? That means that if I were to go to Arches Designer, just Arches Designer, you can see here that, oh, now I have a person model. The person ALE model is now available here. Yeah. And then, so I have this. And now you see here, because I published this model, you'll notice that it's locked. Right. So if I wanted to change this, you see everything is grayed out. And but I want to continue to work on this. So what do I do now? So the next step is once you've published, you can then now draft a model update. And so what you're going to do is go up to this menu here where it says manage and click draft a model update. And now it's open. Now you can see, okay, now I can continue to work on this. So that was kind of the workflow of creating new branches, a new model, all of that. But say, we have all these models here. And if I open this person model, the OG person model, already, I mean, you could essentially start from here. But I'm going to show you 2 ways where you can use the existing models that are in Arches that you might have available to you in Arches Designer or in this demo in particular. So say that I wanted to represent birth, and I know that there's already a birth branch here in this model. I don't want to change anything here. I just want this branch. So the way you can do that is you'll see that there's this arrow and it says export branch. And I'm going to go and click on that. And it has exported this branch into so that it's available. So there's another way to navigate through Arches Designer. There's a dropdown. Anytime you're working on a model, you can switch. You'll see here, there's that person ALE model I created, but also now I have a birth branch. So if I were to go now back into the model that I started, now I can, at this top node, I would not press add child node because I'm not creating a new node. I can add a branch. And oh, there are no branches that can be appended. Well, now I believe that I need to refresh this. Actually, let me go to this birth branch. It's active. Okay, so I should be able, oh no, not that. Yeah, this is active. So I should be able to add this. I'm going to refresh this. All right, and yeah, so now it's there. So sometimes if you've got if you do have a tab open with one you're working on a branch, and then you make a change within this demo somewhere else, you might need to refresh it. So register. So I want to add a branch, and I can click that. This may take a little bit of time. This is a live demo. But essentially what's going to happen then is that it's going to add that branch to my model. It's probably going to take a long time. And but I'm going to, but that's how it works. And oh, there it is. Okay, not too long. I was worried. So now I have the beginnings of my model, and I can, and you know, I have all of this. I have everything that was included in this branch, in addition to my person type, and so that's really kind of how you could start a model. But you'll notice here that I've only been working in this tab, the graph tab. There are other tabs here. There's cards and permissions. So I'm going to publish this and then say added birth, publish. And so this is publishing my model with the new branch in there. And you'll see here that this is all now one. Okay. So as I was mentioning, there's this, so this is, I've been working in this tab called graph, which is really how you build the model, the structure of the model. Now within the demo, you also have the opportunity to create the data entry cards or how it will look in any report. So if I were to look at this branch, and I can see here already that there are cards that have been created for this branch. Okay, birth event location, birth event type, and okay, maybe you brought in this branch from another model, but you realize that, okay, I don't actually like the labels here, and you can change them with using the card manager or the card tab. And so essentially what you do is, so you can click through this and say, okay, birth, maybe you don't want to have birth event location. Maybe you just want birth location or location of birth. Location of birth. Yes, George?
Just when you finish your point, I just want to make a remark.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm going to save the card and update this publication. Change label. Yeah, what's the remark?
So the remark is, I don't know, I think there's a lot of North Americans here, and I don't know if this is Canadian or American, but there is the book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, for children, where if you give a mouse a cookie, then he wants some milk and la la la. There's an element to that, to this modeling here on the particular card you're working on, because if you were designing from scratch and you had made this person model and you had used the branch for birth or what have you, and now and then you say, oh, and there's a birth location or whatever, then the birth location as it's modeled suggests another model, a target model or whatever. And so then that puts you on the path of building out your system. So it's like, oh, now we need to make place records. We have to make a decision about that. What do we document about that, etc. So just pointing towards, like, once you start down the path of like, oh, I thought I was just dealing with documenting people, then it turns out maybe you're also documenting places and that sort of thing. And that particular node, made me think that's something to be aware of as you're going along. Like, you adopt something and then it gives you some best practice. Like, there are different ways you could do this, because this one, as it's modeled, is going to point to, and you can see how the designer works. Like it's a drop down, it's pointing to another edition of another model. And that's one way you can do things. And you could say, actually, I don't care. I'm not really somebody who's interested in documenting places really well. I'll just put a string there. Like I'll just put New York and you can figure it out. That's also a modeling decision you can make. But it's an interesting question as you move along with the designer, what you choose, to keep on going with and where you'll stop and say, that's enough. We don't document that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I'll show you actually how to do that. So draft a model update. And so here's what George was talking about. And I realized I didn't, when I created that person type, I didn't complete it. But so this is birth location is what is the node in question. And it has all of this information. And you'll see here, what I did not go over is the data types when I added, say, this person type, and I should, and I'll do that now. But right now, what George referred to is that currently the data type is resource instance, which means that it points to another model type. So like in this case, place here. But I could change this and change it to, like say you just wanted a string to represent this, which is I think the use case that you discussed. I'll just type in string and type in string, and now that's changed. So if I save this, delete and then recreate. Okay, so it's not letting me do that because there's some validation involved here. But essentially, it's basically saying that you need to delete that and then recreate the node, and then edit the data type and then re-import this branch. So I mean, I could just, if I wanted to, I could add a new branch. I could create a new branch here or new node under birth. Oh my God, it doesn't describe the edits. So I can do that in order to under birth, I could, I'll revert all these changes. We don't really have a lot of changes. But you can make that change. And I think there is a video where we talk about data types, and it's an early video, but it still stands, where we talk about how you can have different, you can, yep. So that is the question. So the resource is the current way to link to other resource models, or resource instance. Yeah, either of those. So yeah, and you can link to multiple models or model types. So for example, in that one was a place, and then that one was place, and then this one you could have there are other nodes where you can have multiple, and I'm trying to think of other ones, but I can't think of at the moment. But say I'm going to go here. I want to add a child node. I'll do that. New node. And I want this to be birth location string, just to demarcate what we're talking about. And then that location's, it's an E53 per place. And that birth took place at. And now here, when it comes to data types, you have many options. Semantic basically is just really, it's a non-data holding data type. It really is to create your semantic sentence, however long that might be.
It's just a concept, I think.
Yeah, if you give a mouse a cookie, absolutely. And then string is what we want to use, but I'll just say here that you can see here that there are multiple different data types that you could use. All right, and then I'll say that. And publish it. Add string location. Okay, publish. So you could do that and then delete the other node if you're not using it, or hide. So I'll say this: you have options here. If you don't want to delete a node, but you can opt. So for example, now I have these two nodes that one's location that refers back to place, and one is one that is string. And if you look at the card for that, you'll see here that you can enter stuff instead of it being a drop down to other instances of a model. But if you wanted to hide a node, you could it's not hidden in the model. If I wanted to this original node, I can actually click this visibility toggle and not make it visible. And so that in the data entry card and in the report, you only see this string. You only see this version of that node, not the other node. So that's one way that you can do that. All right, so I'm actually going to move on because I want to show you another option. So you have all these models, and I'll just show you. See that this has unpublished changes because I did not finish the publishing of that model, but you can do that. And this is a good time for me to say that in the Arches documentation, there is information on the graph versioning and the versioning state. So if you want information on that, on how that actually works, that is in the documentation under in the Arches read the docs documentation under administering and designing the database. But before we end today, I want to show you actually cloning a whole model. And so, which is relatively easy within Arches. So we did person. I'm going to go ahead and do this physical object. So we have this physical object, and we can choose to, in this manage model, you can clone this model, which would create a new instance of this. Also to, actually, while I'm here, since the time is dwindling, you have the option to export this model. So if you are working on a model and in this demo site and you know that it's going to be refreshed, or it's always, I think, Emily, I think you'll agree with me, just in general, just in case, power goes out or and you want to make sure that you have a version of your model, you can always, at any time, while you're working on the model, after publishing, you can export the model, and that exports out the model in JSON. And then you have that model, and then you can, after the refresh has happened on this demo, you can re-import that model using this import model function. Yeah. So you can do that as well. So I think that's probably one of the more helpful things to know about export the model that you're working on, and then you can re-import it later so that you can continue to work on it. And I'll just say that the reason why we do have that automatic refresh every week is because it could get really messy in here, and we want to make sure that anyone who comes to this demo has a good experience and can see more or less how the model should be. But I'd say with the models that currently exist, if you want to work on those, you can. But I would the preferred workflow is for you to clone the model. So yeah, thank you, George, for the additional documentation. And I will say that there is very soon, there is a demo coming up, a more traditional demo site for that OG package. I'm just working out one kink, but for the most part, it will do that. Okay, so we've created a clone, and if I go back, I think the one thing to note here is see. What did I clone? I cloned physical object. Right, it should be here. So we should have a clone of this. Let me go back to designer. Okay. Did it not clone? I guess it didn't clone. I'll just show you another way to clone this. We can clone it via this. Always with a live demo, there's always a hitch. But you should be able to clone this model and then essentially work and then rename it and then potentially make changes to it, and including deleting whatever. And that's really the preferred. Oh, that's interesting. Everyone, I'm going to make sure that that works. So that's and also too, if you're working on the demo, because not a lot of people have used this demo since it's relatively new. You know, I believe this has worked in the past, but I'm going to make sure that that does work, and hopefully that'll happen within the next week. But you should be able to clone a model and then edit your version of that model, and in the ways that we've shown. So, yeah, we have 5 minutes. I'm just going to stop here and ask if there are any questions at this point. And I will just I'm going to note when this has been fixed on the thread for this meeting. Just if you want information on if you're waiting on that functionality. But I'd say that if you have any, while working on using this demo, if you are seeing any issues or behavior that is not optimal, please feel free to put it on the community forum and just let us know, and then we can make sure that we can make sure to address it. Okay, let me stop sharing. Stop share. Okay. So are there? Oh yes, Ron.
Yeah. One thing you haven't touched upon, but when looking at the demo site myself, I was having a look at the controlled lists.
Oh yeah,
section.
I didn't touch. Yeah.
And I was wondering, with the reference data manager, it was possible to import concepts from, for example, AAT via SPARQL endpoint integration.
For control list manager,
yeah.
I don't believe that has been implemented. So in the way that it is in the reference data manager.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I was wondering, is that because that's part of the Lingo package and not any longer been separated from the controlled list functionality, or not?
So really Lingo is to manage the vocabulary. So if is to manage and publish the vocabularies. So if you have your own vocabularies and you're managing that via Lingo, that's separate to Control List Manager. Control List Manager is basically then just if you've published concepts via your implementation of Lingo, and you have then UUID or the URI for that concept, then essentially what you'd be doing is bringing that into Control List Manager and using the URI, and it's really the connection point is currently through the URI. Emily, please correct me on that if I'm misstating that, but I think right now there's no linkage, there's no technical linkage currently between Lingo and Control List Manager.
That's correct. Yeah, it would be exporting a controlled list from Lingo, importing it into the controlled list manager.
Okay.
There may be changes on that in the future, but that's where it stands for now.
But if you want to use a term from the AAT, for example, you can only input or add the AAT identifier as a URI, but you won't get the scope notes and the all the nice things automatically.
That's your best bet for now. But it is something that we're thinking about as we're working on Lingo.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is, thank you for logging that, but also too, if that is an enhancement that you would like, especially for Controlled List Manager, there is a separate repo for the Controlled List Manager extension that I would encourage you to add as an enhancement to the issues there.
Yeah.
Like as Emily mentioned, that's something that we are absolutely looking at. And I think the thing is, moving for everyone here, so we have, if you want to stay, I'm going to stay, but you don't have to stay. You feel free to log off because I know we're getting to 9 o'clock, but I'm just going to share this for everyone. I did not go into the data type having to do with controlled vocabularies because right now in this current demo, we have both. We actually have the reference data manager, which is the pre-version 8 way to manage controlled vocabularies within Arches. And we also have the new way, which is Controlled List Manager. And Controlled List Manager basically is the collections portion of the reference data manager. And we're still building out the functionality and in the future. So, but we have separated that functionality. And as you have just mentioned, one of the things that has not been added back in is the ability to bring in something using Sparkle, using an NAT concept using Sparkle.
Thanks for clarifying. Sorry if this was out of scope, but
no. No, absolutely. This is what these calls are for. I think the more questions I get, the better. But yeah, so I think, and so for everyone else, I think there is a video that talks about Controlled List Manager and how to use it especially with using Arches Designer. And this links to Arches Designer via using the reference data type. And now we use a lot of terms that are similar to the reference data type, and I'll just quickly show that here. So when I had my original model for person AOE, I had this person type, but I didn't define, unfortunately, I did not define at the time. Update. We have this. So essentially here, I did not define what the data type was. And essentially I would be, I'll just update publication, update. There's a lot of clicking in Arches Designer, which is you have an interface, so that's part of the deal, is that it's a interactive, it's a clickable interface. So person type, and then here you'll see that there are two options for controlled vocabularies here. The old way, which is concept list, which is if moving forward, when we get to version 9, will no longer be supported. So if you are new to Arches, I would absolutely suggest using the new way, which is this reference data type. And then you have the opportunity to select a controlled list that exists and which is defined in the Controlled List Manager. So you can do that and select it here, and that will basically attach a drop-down list to that particular node. Okay. All right. Stop here. Is this more in the chat? Okay. All right, great. Are there any questions at this point? It sounds like, and let me know. I think I'm thinking about what the next meeting should be about. If there is something that, if there is anything that you would like more information on, let me know. But if you want a continuation of what we just did, we can do that as well. Like as I said earlier, I can talk about this probably for hours, and I have. So yeah, great. So If there are no other questions, just note that I will announce, this is a quarterly meeting, so I will announce the next meeting in before probably in the next couple months and the topic. But if you have a suggestion for a topic or if you have a suggestion for a topic, please let me know. All right. Thank you, everyone.